Hey, Year 11, we are almost there. Almost time for your big English language exam, paper 1, 70% of this, baby. Okay, so let's go over some last-minute advice. First of all, on this slide, you will see that I've written some amusing, hopefully, information. Try to find all the trappers that I've used. Remember to use trappers in your own writing. You can pause now and look for those trappers. Right. Most important thing probably for you to remember is to keep track of your time. Many of you will remember from your mock exam that you found that difficult. You have 45 minutes per section. Now, you open up the exam, you begin, you see that you have 45 minutes for section A. There will not be anyone telling you, section A is now finished, go to section B. So what you should do is write down your projected finishing time when you start a section and then move on, even if you're not finished when time is up. If you have time at the very end, you can come back and finish whatever you haven't had time to finish. Right, section A, this is the unseen nonfiction. You're ready for this because we have read so much unseen nonfiction before. Okay, here's what you need to do. You have 45 minutes for this section. Let's say your exam begins at 9 o'clock. You write down on your paper 9:45 to make sure that you move on at 9:45. Take the first 10 minutes and prepare. That's right, 10 minutes of preparation will equal and much better answers. So you turn the page, you read the questions, then you come back and you read the unseen text, but you don't just read it, you highlight, you annotate, you look for the devices that have been used. For example, on this one, in a fine, chilly, and drifting mist, bam, there's a triad there, so you just highlight that. And then you could talk about how the author has used triads to engage the reader. More on that in a minute. Right, section A questions. The first couple questions are pretty simple. They just want you to look for certain details. Don't spend any more than 10 minutes on this section, please. Now, you need to remember to follow directions. They might ask you to look at certain lines or certain group of lines, and it'll tell you how many words and phrases that they want you to find. So make sure that you follow the directions so you don't lose these really simple marks. The next question is going to ask is the whole in your own words question. Do not spend more than 10 minutes on this question, okay? You write a paragraph or so, you're looking for, well, just whatever they're asking you to. In this one, they're asking you to look at a group of lines and then explain how the writer is doing something. In your own words means exactly that. You do not quote the text. You paraphrase, you put it in your own answers. Right, the big question on this section is the 12-mark question. How does the writer try to create atmosphere? Or it might ask you, well, who knows what it's going to ask you, but it's going to give you bullet points. Make sure that you follow those bullet points. If it doesn't give you bullet points, remember you're annotating it, you're looking, you're answering about language and structure. Now, you should have 15 minutes left at this point, okay, if you're following my brilliant instructions. So, what you need to do, of course, first of all, is plan and then spend the rest of your time answering the question. I would probably take about 5 minutes to plan because at this point you know the text really, really well. And so then you can go on and you'll have 10 minutes to write. Okay, moving on to section B. Now you have 45 minutes for this one, but you have 2 questions. Remember, you have a question on one of the texts from Anthology A, whichever one's the exam board gods choose, and then you have a writing question. So the first question, it'll be on a text that looks familiar to you because it's from Anthology A. In January 2013, they used your guide to beach safety. Now they will give you a copy of the text. It'll be clean, it won't have your notes on it. So in your first 22 minutes that you're going to spend on this, you need to spend your first few minutes preparing. Okay, 10 minutes preparing. Reread the text that they've given you, annotate it for the trappers, look at the question, and then plan. Okay, 10 minutes prep and then 12 minutes or more writing. Now, we know it's going to ask you something like this. How does the writer engage the reader or interest the reader? Something to that effect. It may give you bullet points, it may not. Now, when we're talking about how the writer has been engaged, you must talk about effect. Okay, so you don't want to just choose some bits of the text and say this triad or this rhetorical question engages the reader, but you want to say why. You want to say, well, this triad was hilarious, so the reader finds it funny, or this rhetorical question makes the reader feel really sad, or this headline serves as a warning to the reader. That's how you're going to get your good marks, is talking about the effect. So do it. Right, moving on. this is how you're being marked in this section, that you read and you understand the text, that you've come up with ideas about what the writer has done, and you talk about the language and the structure and how it gets those effects. Now, in order to get a good mark here, we need to fall into level 2, at least 5 marks. So you evaluate what the writer has done and how they've created effect. Also, if you get a question that asks you about 2 things, make sure that you spend half of the exam on one part and half of your essay on the other. So for example, if it was about touching the void, they would ask you about Simon's perspective and Joe's perspective. Your essay would need to spend half of your time on Joe and half on Simon. Then, to get a higher mark, your evaluation is more perceptive and it's more detailed. Now, 22 minutes left of section B. Take a deep breath. You're halfway through the exam. This is the writing question. We don't know which type of writing you are going to be asked, okay? And we don't know which form. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. This was in January 2013. Asked them to write an article, gave them the audience of teenagers. The purpose was advice. If you are not given an audience, assume that you are writing for an educated adult. Use formal language. None of this, hey, yo, bro, listen to this, okay? If you're not given a form, such as an article, then you need to just write an essay. Now, I want to remind you about the different purposes of writing. Difference between argue and persuade. Remember that persuasive writing is stronger than argumentative writing. Persuasive writing wants the audience to do something in particular. Both styles of writing are biased. Both styles of writing, all of your writing, includes the trappers. Okay, use these devices. We've talked about this a million gazillion times. So make sure that you use these. Okay. Now, if you get an advise question, okay, they'll probably ask you to advise to people that are younger than you, like write a letter advising year 7s about what they need to do in secondary school, or they'll ask you to advise to your teachers or advise to a head teacher. They're going to choose an audience that you know. Now, you need to use imperatives, so these are commands talking about what the person should do. Now, I just said should. Could, maybe. These are all modal verbs. These make commands sound a little bit nicer, a little bit more polite. So you might tell year 7s, one thing that you should do is make sure you revise for your exams. That would be an example. Okay, writing to describe, inform, explain. You've been doing this since year 7. You know what you're doing. Okay, just to remind you. Writing to describe is all about using the senses. So if you have to describe a typical day at school, then you're talking about what you see, what you hear, what you feel, so forth. Now, if you get asked to inform about a topic or explain about a topic, you're actually doing both of these things. Pause this, take a look at this slide, remind yourself about the different characteristics of these types of writing. Okay, writing to explore. Now, if you are asked to write to explore, you're looking at different possibilities. You'll definitely need to use conditional forms or modal forms, okay? Might, could, should, may. I'll give you an example in a minute. Please remember that exploration doesn't have an answer. So, let's say that you get this exam question. Write an article in which you explore the implications of removing exams. First thing that you would need to do, remember you've got 22 minutes no matter what kind of writing question they give you. You need to plan. Implications means advantages and disadvantages. So you think about those, plan for 10 minutes, and then write for 12. Here's an idea about an introduction. Removing exams holds a variety of implications for students, schools, and societies. This is quite good, if I do say so myself, because it sets up your answer. The examiner knows that you're next going to talk about students, and then you're going to talk about schools, and then you're going to wrap it up with society. Boom, job done. Here's a sample paragraph. For many year 11 students, the possibility of removing GCSE exams would bring happiness, exhilaration, and relief. That's a triad, baby. Then, statistic, 95% of year 11 students experience an increase in stress levels during their exams, according to a study produced by Oxford University. Totally made that up. Remember, you can do that. Then I look at the other side. However, really good transition word there. The removal of exams could, that's a modal verb, use them, decrease the level of education that students possess as they leave schools. Some students, without exams looming in their future, may not focus on their studies. Then, conclusion. Keep it short, just like the introduction. The majority of your essay should be spit here in the middle. Exams have been a part of the UK education system for many years. Removing them has many implications, as listed above, that will need to be considered carefully. Remember, with writing to explore, you're not, in your conclusion, telling anyone what they ought to do. Okay, regardless of which type of writing that you are asked to do, here's how you're being marked. You communicate clearly, you organize your ideas in sentences and paragraphs, and SPAG, sentence structures, punctuation, spelling, and grammar. Really important that you remember, we're trying to get into level 2 here, so your paragraphs are organized, your sentences are organized, you use a variety of punctuations such as colons, semicolons, hyphens, etc., especially if you want to get into those level 3 marks. Okay, the forms of writing. You could be asked to write a newspaper article, a speech, a magazine article, or a letter. You've had lots of practice on all of these, so you know how to write these. Review your notes. Now, they might also ask you to write a report. I'm going to do a separate screencast on reports and on scripts because those are the ones that we've spent less time on. I don't think it's likely that you'll be asked to write one of those, but just in case, watch the second screencast. All right, section C, that's right, we only have one more section to go. We've got 45 minutes. This is a big one. You only have one writing task. It's worth 20 marks, okay, so it's 1/3 of the exam, so 45 minutes. Look at the question from January. A new government believes that sport is not important and that it should no longer be taught in schools. Write a letter to a newspaper, so you're writing to the editor, explaining your views, explaining on this proposal. And then it says you may choose to write about. Ignore that may. They want you to write about these things. So how the proposal might affect young people, benefits, problems. It's really nice. That sets up your answer for you. First thing you'd want to do. Now, you have 45 minutes for this. You need to spend a good 10 minutes planning. So take each bullet point and plan for each bullet point. Write for 20 to 25 minutes, and then please go back and edit and check. Make sure your sentences make sense. If you have time and you haven't used any short sentences, throw a short sentence in there somewhere. Same thing for punctuation. See if you can go back, first of all, make sure that you have punctuated everything correctly, and then see if you can throw in a colon or a semicolon or a hyphen if you've not done that. Okay, you do all those things, you're going to be on fire. You're going to do really, really well. Okay. Just like the other writing task, for this one, you get 1/3 of your marks on spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Your sentences need to make sense. You need a wide variety of sentence structures, okay? So try to use sentences that begin with clauses, okay, and subclauses. That's why we've had literacy starters at the beginning of every English lesson so that you can practice with those. And then make sure that you use punctuation correctly, of course. You do all those things, you're going to score extraordinary GCSEs. Can't wait to see you on results day. It's going to be brilliant. Now, what you should do today, I know I sound very bossy. I'm not going to apologize because I want you to do well tomorrow. First of all, read over your anthology section A. Make sure that you've written down language and structure devices for each of those texts, even the beach safety. They might use it again in this exam. We don't know. And read over them again. Practice the engage interest question with an unseen text, okay? So choose, if your teacher has given you the unseen packet, choose one of those, and then make sure you can explain how that writer has engaged or interested the audience, and you're talking about effect. Read over your notes on the different types of writing. You could ask someone to quiz you, make a poster, record yourself talking about it. Any of those activities will help to get it into your head a little bit more. And finally, Mr. Peel and I have worked quite hard on our Twitter feed over the past year. You don't have to follow us, and we're not going to stalk you or anything, but find us on Twitter. You see our little thing there. And then look over all of our past feeds, all the ones that are marked for year 11. That gives you lots and lots of advice. Now, I'm dedicating my Sunday today to year 11. If you do any of these questions, I'll have my email open. Just email them to me, and I will forward it to your English teacher, and I'll get you feedback as soon as possible. Okay? Best of luck, year 11. You worked really hard. Your English teachers have worked really hard with you. We feel that you are on the road to success. Best of luck. Let us know how you do. Remember to watch the second screencast if you want some advice on how to write a report and how to write a script.